Okay, so let's look at this because I keep getting it. If you don't have a court order and the mother of your child is withholding your children from you, why are you afraid to go get your kids? Like, just pick them up from school and keep them. Most of the time, guys say, well, I don't know what the law is, or I don't understand the law. Do you need to understand the law to go outside? Do you ever wake up during the day and you walk outside and you say, man, I don't know all... There's a million laws in the books. Lawyers don't know them all. We have so many laws that we can't count them. Politicians have admitted that before. So when you go outside, you're bound to break a law. Some cities have ordinances you can't spit on the sidewalk, or, jaywalking. If you don't walk on a crosswalk, that's against the law. Do you walk outside the door saying, there's a likelihood I'm going to break a law, so let me just stay inside? No, you don't. I mean, you could break a law driving. Everybody speeds all the time. But when let's say 3 months ago, you had your kids every weekend. Your mother let you take them every weekend. You guys are separated. It's not working out. And you take your kids every other weekend. Now she's pissed at you. Or in the case, I talked to a guy who said the mother had a restraining order against him because of some false allegations. That restraining order expired. He reached out to her to see the kids. She ignored him. And he also reached out to her mother or somebody else in her family. So he contacted her, and she didn't try and get another restraining order. So she's not afraid of him. She's not trying to get another restraining order. There's no court order in place. And he said his kids still want to see him. He hasn't seen his kids in a while. I said, why don't you pick them up from school? And he said the same thing guys always say, oh, she'll call the cops. And then I said, so? And? Are you afraid? If you drive your own car, or you walk your own dog, or you're listening to your own Bose headphones, are you afraid that somebody's going to call the cops because you're walking away with them, away from where people are used to seeing them? Like, if people are used to seeing your car on the driveway and a neighbor reports it stolen, and let's say a neighbor says, I'm going to call the cops on you if you drive your car away, would you get scared and say, oh, I don't know what the law is on that? No, you would think they're a psychotic weirdo and this is my car. So if you go to school and pick up your kids and you spend time with them and act like the father of your own kids, if the mother's going to call the cops if you do that, or she threatens to do that, or you're worried about it, you're scared to death suddenly. But a few months ago, you were picking up the kids from school. A few months ago, you were taking them overnight for the whole weekend, or whatever you were doing, or sometime in the past. What's the difference now? First of all, let's say you're together or married or living together, or you're a couple and you break up. Does that automatically give the mother a right to keep the kids? If she used your car before, does she get to take your car? I give the example all the time. If both of you have a car in your own name and you're living together, and then you drive the car and she was pissed because she was going to borrow the car to go out with her girlfriends or whatever. And she's pissed at you or mad, or she's drunk or tipsy, and so she calls the cops and reports the car stolen. The car is in both your guys' names, and so your registration has both your names. And then she calls the cops, and the cops pull you over. Are you going to say, oh my God, I knew she would call the cops, I was afraid this would happen? Or would you say, it's my car? How come you don't do the same thing with your kids? Now, there's always some fruity little scaredy cat, little simp cowards who will jump in the comments and say, oh, it's against the law, parental kidnapping, this and that. Okay, show me where the law is. There is no such law, except Georgia has a law of presumption of custody to the mother. And then Michigan has a law about you can't keep a kid from a mother until you get a court order for more than 24 hours. But guys won't even get their kids for 24 hours. Now, those are fascist communistic laws. Okay? In Washington, we have a law called custodial interference, but if you actually take the time to read it, it's RCW 9A as in Apple .40. That says, if you take a child to conceal a child and withhold a child from a parent with the intent to withhold them for a protracted period of time, which means a very long period of time, that's custodial interference. And it's a gross misdemeanor the first time. It's a Class C felony the second time. I've only heard of 2 cases in my 20 years of dealing with this where somebody was actually prosecuted for custodial interference. And one of them, the guy took his daughter and disguised her to Montana from Washington, took her and changed her name and hid her for 2 years. And then when they found him and prosecuted him, he was found not guilty by a jury because he was hiding her from her mom and the mom's boyfriend who were cooking meth, and she had asthma. But a family law judge terminated his rights. Judge Catherine J. Nelson in Tacoma, Washington. She's retired now. Fat, greasy ball of man-hating, big fat tub of man-hating goo. In any case, but think about it. If it's a crime for you to spend time with your kids when you're not together or not living with the mother, or there's no court order, why did you do it at first when she was letting you? Because she lets you. And you think the mother owns the children, and you're paranoid. And you're a big... There's nothing... Once you find out this, and I can, when I first did my case, my baby's mom was letting me see my kid for 4 hours, 2 or 3 times a week. After she got an attorney, she went 40 days withholding my child from me. Right after my daughter was born, she started withholding her. And then I went to court. First, she tried to do the restraining order thing. The judge said, hey, talk to your mother and talk to you, or use somebody as a middleman and talk to her and set it up. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it to say that I had third-party communication and her to turn. So then she comes to court later. The judge is like, after our second hearing, the judge is like, was there any visitation? Did you guys succeed at visitation? She goes, he didn't even call and stuff. So she tried to get a restraining order against me, and then she turns around and is complaining that I didn't call. And then she also said, well, if he really wants to see his kid, I think he should keep up with his fiduciary duty. And the judge is like, are you saying he needs to pay you money to see his kid? She's like, oh, no, I didn't mean that. And that's exactly what she meant. So he kind of busted her. So if you hammer away and pick at somebody who's lying, sometimes the judge will bust them for you. Your attorney won't even ask questions like this. But think about my point. You're walking around, when you're together, you're walking around with the kids. You take them to a park on your own without the mother. You break up. She lets you take them to the park on your own. Then all of a sudden she says you can't have them. What changed? Did your status, when you got the divorce, or when you get divorced, you have a court order, but when you separated or when you broke up, did that change? That changed the status of your baby's mom. She's not your girlfriend anymore. Did that change your status as father? You're such a legal scholar saying there's got to be a law out there somewhere I'm breaking because this just feels like a crime because I'm such a punk ass bitch. I think it's blasphemy to actually keep my daughter from the mother, and I don't want to go for full custody. I only want 50-50, which is harder to get than full custody. Your status as father didn't change. Go get your kid or kids. This guy told me his kids want to see him. He knows where they go to school. I said, why don't you go just pick them up on a Friday and keep them all weekend? And he had no excuse after I ran through these questions. Like I said, are you afraid? If you're afraid of some law that you don't know exists, why aren't you afraid to go outside? There's a billion laws in the books. Why aren't you afraid? Because we turn into total pussies when it comes to women. Stop being a pussy. Stand up. And ideally, it's best to file for full custody and then get your kids and say, I'm going to keep the kids. And if the cops come, watch my video on YouTube, how I deal with the cops. But just stop being a pussy, okay?